Welcome to the Corporate Venturing Insider Series, where I interview top practitioners in the CVC world and learn with you the best practices and golden nuggets that they have accumulated over their career. In this episode, we will be learning from Sherwin Pryor, Director of the Amazon Industrial Innovation Fund. Sherwin, could you take a few minutes to share your story and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. We've known each other for a while. I'm just so excited to talk about this new opportunity and what we're doing over at Amazon Industrial Innovation Fund. But a background about how I got here. For those who don't know me, I've been an investor since early 2000. I started off on the buy side doing small cap growth equity. I've been in corporate venture since 2010. I was very fortunate to help launch General Motors corporate venturing activity. And it was really interesting thinking back on that period of time. Today we call it auto tech or mobility tech. There was no such thing at the time that we started with. And so that was exciting. I ended up there, quite interestingly. On the buy side, I worked for Morgan Stanley. I was a buy side analyst and I covered transportation, including autos. And there was a guy, Steve Gursky, who was well known as a sell side analyst covering autos. Steve got on the board for General Motors, representing the union. And a few years later, unfortunately, we go through bankruptcy. Coming out of bankruptcy, Steve joined the leadership team for full-time basis. He was the vice chair of corporate development and strategy. So this was his idea to create GM Venture. And so he reached out to me because we both knew the auto industry. And we knew some of the challenges overcoming long entrenched types of development processes. And we wanted to do something new. So I was certainly happy to take on that challenge, right? So I spent 8 years at GM Ventures. We got a lot done. So I'm very proud of that team. We did about 40 deals. We led half of those. So that was really unique during the early 2010, 2011, 2012 to find a corporate deal. That's far more prevalent today, but during that time, less than 20%. So we also had 12 exits. But the big win was we had two really cool technologies that are in GM vehicles today. The most popular, well-known one is the Cadillac Super Cruise. So that was a really interesting story. So that's how I ended up in venture. I left in 2018 and I spent 2 years trying to raise my own venture fund, focused on mobility. That ultimately didn't work, but I'm really glad I gave it a shot. And what I learned in that process is frankly why I love being a corporate venture and being associated with that idea of helping watch a startup go through the development process and change the world, right? That's an awesome feeling. So a few months ago, November of last year, Amazon reached out to me, the global robotics team. Global robotics supports our package business and all of the centers that we use for the package business. And so they had this idea. They really wanted to get involved with startups really early. We have a lot of scale at Amazon, and we saw a unique opportunity to develop an entity, a corporate venturing group that can mentor these startups. Because when you go really early, those guys need a lot of help. And so I was aligned with that vision. They're based out of Boston, our robotics group. And so it was an exciting opportunity. And it's so different being in this business as opposed to manufacturing. So that's how I ended up in venture. I haven't looked back. I absolutely love supporting startups. I love working with fellow corporates and financial investors to help these technologies get to market.
Thank you, Sherwin. So let me go back to the very beginning of your background, because I think that's interesting. And I think you're probably the first one of the 50 plus interviews who come from the buy side, especially on the equity. And my guess is that it comes with a lot of discipline on value and timing. Can you share a little bit what it is that you're still using today that you learned when you were on the buy side at Morgan Stanley?
Yeah. So what's fascinating about the buy side, for those who may not be that familiar, we were the ones who manufactured the product, the small cap growth product. So we may have a portfolio of 35 to 40 companies, but you literally talk and meet hundreds of management teams. You see some really good ones, you see some really bad ones. Right? But what you really still care about is the size of a market opportunity and how is this company differentiating itself to capitalize on that opportunity.
When you mentioned buy in, you mean building your own conviction. right? Not just about, I agree with what the entrepreneur is saying. You need to actually buy in into what they're saying. It becomes your conviction.
Yeah, that is really key. We always say that we're betting on the jockey, not the horse, right? So the jockey is that CEO, and they should be able to tell you a story, paint you a picture. Why do they value this dream? And do you share that value? That's really an important part of the process. I've seen some companies that are working on things that are interesting, but I don't have the conviction around that. And because you need to champion this company and these investment periods are really long, like a marriage, you really got to be aligned from the beginning or you're not doing them a service. And so I'm asking myself all the time, Nicholas, how do I add value to this story?
Can you
Right.
share a bit of your experience about the bad practices you saw and what you did to make sure that you are not anchored by them, but actually challenge them?
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. Some of our friends that are in corporate that are investing somehow, whether they have a well-developed CVC or some other avenue, they can relate to this. The challenge is your corporation always feels that is adding far more value to the startup than it actually is. Okay. Every company that I've worked for, and Amazon is my fourth, right? I always hear it. We're bringing all this value. But then when you challenge them to show you the results, show me the results of where this value came from, that's where it falls apart. What happens is they come into too many corporations start from a very selfish position. They're looking for what can they get out of this company instead of what can we bring to this company. And what we know is that venture capital is a risk sharing business. This is why when existing investors don't participate, they normally get punished. So what I would see was that in the terms, the writer first notice, the writer first offer, they basically want to lock up the option to buy the company. What they don't spend enough time doing is thinking through the consequences on future finance. So I think what I've been able to do in most cases very well is educate the leadership team. They have preconceptions about how this business works, which is often very different from how it actually works. So I like to take the time up front and invest in educating my leadership team around some of the perceptions they have and what happens in practice. And I keep them focused on longer term value. So I quickly adopted a basic NVCA term sheet. We did need certain conditions precedent in certain cases, but you have to be careful that whatever you put in this term sheet, I'm always thinking about the room after my room.
So it does not escalate into even worse terms anyway.
Exactly. As we know, it's so easy to say no in venture capital because there's just so many companies and not enough of the VCs. So you quickly assess the deck and then you move on. So I also wanted that to permeate our brand because this bad news travels faster than good news. So we wanted people who were exposed to our term sheets or who interacted with our team. We wanted them to be able to say, yeah, I've seen their term sheets. They're actually starting from a place I would start. And that actually facilitates getting a syndicate partner faster than that.
It does make sense. I feel like there's a golden nugget. You talked about sub brand. Can you double click on that?
Yeah. So if you go back to 2010, it was not lost on me as a person living in Michigan that we had two of the big three going to bankruptcy. The big companies like GM, they're already lightning rod brand. Half the world loves it for whatever reason. Half the world doesn't love it for whatever reason. And so what I recognized was this unique opportunity. Building GM Ventures, I was approaching a industry segment that actually had no legacy experience with the company. Well, they weren't entrenched in their views that it was good or bad. And so because they weren't entrenched, we had the opportunity to set what that perception was. But our name was GM Ventures. So I couldn't escape the General Motors, right? That's why I call it a sub brand, because people knew if you were talking to GM Ventures, GM is not going to acquire your company. They're not going to overpay for a deal, but they are going to be fair. And that even led to twice we recapped. And one of the best compliments I ever got, did a recap and they always suck for those who are participating. But someone wrote me a note, one of the existing investors, and he said, listen, this really sucks, but you made it as painless as it could possibly be, given how painful it is. That was a huge compliment.
Oh, let's triple click on this. What did you do to make it that painless? Because that's always painful.
Yeah. What I did was treated everyone fairly, right? So when you have a company that's been around 8 or 9 years and you've raised multiple rounds, the misalignment happens right away. And so what I did was I looked at the cap table. So one thing people will learn about me, I'm a cap table junkie. The cap tables have to be right. And I have everybody on my team can do cap table. Because what I tell them all the time is when you're doing a deal, everyone gets along. But it won't take long before misalignments happen. Before that happens, you should know who your friends are. You don't wait till you make friends to figure out who they are. The other challenge is, because we are corporates, sometimes we want to be adults, sometimes we don't, right? There are times when you just have to recognize you've been on the wrong train and you guys collectively have to make a decision. I've been in situations where I would communicate. So a breach comes along because it's not going well. The very first breach comes along. I would tell the board, I would say, listen, we don't think that this is going to work for us. We're happy to support this bridge, but this will be our last check. You can't pull the rug out from under a startup, but you can give them a lot of advance notice and a little financial support. Back to the education of your leadership team. I would say to my leadership team, listen, most of these aren't going to work, but don't be surprised if I come to you and ask for your blessing to put more money into this company that I told you is not going to work. I'm doing it because we're positioning for a better exit, which will provide a better outcome for everyone. Or some corporates like to bury their head in the sand. All of a sudden, when things aren't going well, they have nothing to say in the boardroom. So they're communicating to you, we're done with this story. And I don't think that's the way to build relationships that last a long time in an industry that is predicated on relationships that last a long time.
I think you just described a beautiful golden. I like the fact you communicate with the leadership team, you communicate with the entrepreneurs, their board, to make sure the expectation is set. You are no longer a fit, but you're going to help and to structure it the right way.
Yes. And part of that help is sometimes you can introduce them to other investors that might be better suited or other strategics where a strategic transaction might develop, right? But you never stop fighting for the startup, even when you're not going to fund it. But the key is to make sure that you communicate fairly and transparently always.
Very nice. I want to touch on team building. So clearly you've done it multiple times across multiple CVCs. How do you think about team building when you start, especially in terms of internal to the mothership, external to the mothership, and the level of skill set you're looking at, especially when you're thinking about maybe the first 5 or 10 of your team?
Yeah, so very interesting experiences. So General Motors, I actually inherited a team of people that was already there. These were MBA types, had never had any investment experience. They weren't engineers, but they were really passionate about business. So what you have to do then in that case, if you inherit people, you have to give them a real assessment, right? So when I remember doing the very first performance reviews, the team had been newly formed. It had been 4 months from the time I joined, and we run into the performance evaluation time. I give everyone meets expectations. And Nicholas, they had a fit, right? We're so used to grade inflation, but each one that I spoke to, I would ask them, have you ever done this before? No. I says, listen, that's why you have a meet expectation. I says, more importantly, as a team, we're all starting from the same point. So what I am doing is baselining and level setting everyone so that people can get evaluated fairly based upon results that they have delivered. So I don't wait till performance review to get feedback. The best thing you can do for an employee is provide them real-time feedback from the very beginning. Now let's contrast that to some of the other places I worked where I was literally trying to build a team. But in both cases, the common denominator was I'm looking for people that are super passionate about working with entrepreneurs. We have to ask more questions before we can give them feedback. We have to understand. We have to look for solutions. In a big corporation, we all know we're going to get paid at whatever the regular pay cycle is. You don't know that in a startup. I need you to be empathetic to that. So when I thought about building the team here at Amazon, a couple of things. Amazon values speed. Amazon values think big. So I wanted to come in and make impact as quickly as possible.
How do you define your KPIs for yourself, for your team, year on year? How do you see them maturing as you mature your fund?
Well, that's a really good one. Corporates have struggled with KPIs for a long time. Here's how I think about that. Our objective here in the short run, year to year, is 25 deals in the first year. And then we will look at all of the mechanisms or processes we have in place. And did we hit that or not hit that? I just went from a team of 1 on March the 1st to a team of 5 today. So we're in the early days, but we haven't changed the metric. So do I recognize we may not hit it in 2022? Yes, I do. But I think it's the right metric. When you have a fund this size, we need to make an impact in the market. And so one of the things you see us doing is making a range of investments. We're targeting Series C to Series B. And we're starting really early, but I'm open as sometimes the lettering of a stage gets a little fuzzy. So what I'm more interested in is what is the specific opportunity? What is the situation of the opportunity? So we're not going to change the metrics. I never want to lower the bar. We have to find ways. Let's understand why we didn't hit it. If we didn't hit it, what parts of the mechanism should be changed to get to desired results? And so I have a heuristic, and I would love to hear how you think about this. My experience over the last 12 years is that one of your investment team leads can probably manage 8 to 10 portfolio companies and still be able to source some deal flow. Once you get beyond that ratio, you begin to compromise the ability of that talent to bring in. Have you seen that, or what's the KPI that you use for that measure?
So we don't have KPIs in terms of number of investments or number of portfolio companies, investment directors, but I can relate to the sizing of the team in the way of, if we want to bring real value to our portfolio companies, I think you can do that probably to between 6 and 8. And I'm talking about supporting them outside the board, but also in the board. And if you start to do more than that, you probably are compromising somewhere. The problem is that the somewhere is probably going to be in the value to the entrepreneurs. And so I think the sizing of the team needs to grow. And in a way, it scales nearly linearly with a portfolio company size. And if not, then you're compromising somewhere.
I agree with that. And I tell you, as I reflect on lessons learned when I was at GM Ventures, the biggest one is this takes a bigger time commitment than companies think when they go down this path. I think many corporations start this process wanting to be fairly passive, but then they quickly find themselves questioning the result. Yeah. And I say, don't you think they're correlated? If you didn't spend a lot of time, why would you expect a lot of value?
It's true.
And I love your idea around the 6 to 8. And I think that there's a lot of room there, because what happens is by the time you get to year 3, 4, 5, you begin to get this distribution. There's a steady cadence. 20% of these things are we're not going to do this anymore. You'll have another 20% that do really well. And some of these things last a long time. Interesting story. In 2011, we invested in Relay Ride, now called Turo. Turo is a venture-backed company. So it goes to show you, these are very long-tailed opportunities. And those that can find ways to keep business momentum can keep getting funded. I want to believe all good ideas get funded. And I'm sure entrepreneurs will disagree with that. The marketplace sorts this out. If you got a really good idea.
Yep. So I want you to maybe take 3 minutes for the entrepreneurs who are going to listen now, to watch the video later. What's the mission of the fund? What's the investment thesis you're building? And what value do you plan to bring to them?
Thank you for that opportunity to talk about that. So the Amazon Industrial Innovation Fund is really looking to turbocharge the industrial automation space. So clearly we're looking at our package business. But what we're hoping to do is to support strong entrepreneurs that are working on really hard problems. Some of those problems today, maybe they're targeting supply chain logistics right away, but there are some cases they're not. We're still interested in those stories. What I'm looking for, let's take identification. We care a lot about, can we identify the different barcodes on the package, right? And we're looking to reduce the number of handheld scans. So if you're working on the identification technology, but you're targeting the cellular industry for mobile phones, I want to talk to you, right? And what you can expect from us is, Nicholas, we're putting one of the best teams on the field. This team has 20 years of venture experience collectively. We have 20 years of buy-side experience. We're investors that are passionate about entrepreneurs. What we think we can offer you is the opportunity for the mentoring, not only from us, from some of our technical experts. We can help you think through how to scale your technology. We can help you think through addressing some of the technological challenges that you guys may experience. We want to hear from you early. Maybe you've just spun out of a university and you're looking into your first seed round. Maybe you're a Series B company and you're looking for growth, right? Let's have that conversation. And what we're going to bring you is not just the power of our fund and our team, but the power of Amazon and the power of our network, right? And so this is what we're looking for these entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Sherwin. And I can say for the entrepreneurs who are listening, we have co-invested with Sherwin in the past, and it means every single word. And that leads me to something, Sherwin, because you talk about this 20 years experience. You haven't quite answered my question earlier about your recruitment between internal and external. So maybe let me put it with a positive spin. When is it valuable to recruit internal team members, and when is it valuable to recruit external team members?
Yeah, thank you for rephrasing that. So here's what I will tell you. It's beneficial to recruit experienced startup people. They can be partnerships people. They can be former investors, whether you're a partner or not. My preference is to typically recruit outside people. Part of the reason for that is you really want to inject new thinking. And one of the things you bring in, if you're not careful about selecting internal people, you bring some of the bad habits of your organizations that you're trying to shed. For example, if someone says to me, hey, we've seen this company before. This happened to me. I had a guy that we brought in from engineering. They had seen this startup 3 years before. And his first reaction when I sent him this name was, oh, we've seen this before. They don't have anything. I said, that was 3 years ago. And so that's when you kind of said, okay, maybe I got the wrong guy. That can happen. But now what I will say, in an organization the size of Amazon that attracts people from many industries, I had quite a few people who actually had venture experience that have reached out to me. And that is the type of thing that I've gotten those guys on a short list. And so once we have instituted the infrastructure, we begin to scale, I would look at them. But I also like external people that are working in venture because they have the most real-time view of what's happening in the marketplace. They have the most up-to-date networks. Once you've been in a corporation for 5 years, 7 years, you tend to lose some of those. So I do have a clear bias. I will acknowledge that. My team today, 2 of the folks were hired from the outside, as I said, and another folks were inside. So it's a team of 5, and 3 of us are from the outside and 2 of us from the inside. So maybe that 40-60 internal to external is a good measurement.
Okay, I think I agree with this kind of nice ratio and leveraging the value of each. And I think part of it is also the filters you need to be careful about.
Yeah, I agree. And not being an engineer, look, I've always operated with an investment thesis, right? And I would meet all types of companies. I don't need to know the four-stroke cycle variable internal combustion engine to know if I'm hearing an interesting story attacking a segment of the market that has considerable size. And if that doesn't come across in the pitch, you need to probe for that. And you just say, come back once you understand that.
Very nice. So in the last minute together, can you describe what you are excited to invest in the next 12 months?
Look, we have an exciting opportunity with a large electric vehicle aircraft, right? And we think a lot about the movement of packages. We think a lot about sustainability and ESG. So I'm super excited about this one. We have another company that has a unique robotics technology that allows for humans and robots to actually safely operate without cages. We're super excited about that one. So you will find that we're excited about things that might be honestly a bit of a moonshot. That aircraft, we recognize it's a moonshot and it may not work. That's one of the reasons we like it the best. I'm probably more bullish about that one, right? So those are the ones that we're looking at. I'm really happy to say that the market has embraced the fact that we have this fund. I will suggest to people to look me up on LinkedIn, reach out to me. I will get to you. People know me. And so I'm not hard to find. I want to be easy to find.
Very nice. Sharon, thank you for your time today and for all the golden nuggets and sharing the best practices today. It was excellent.
Thanks, Nicholas. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.